Orda, the Girl Who Spoke to the Wind by Hilder, Hage, illustrated by Cynthia, Gail. Orda, the Girl Who Spoke to the Wind. A 1,000 years ago, there had lived a people on an island in a northern ocean. A young girl's reasoning of the world about did cause her people to go on a perilous journey upon many seas. How this came to be is the venturing story of Orda and her people. On this island, the gathering of elder eggs was an enjoyed task of children, and Orda among them. It is so, where it can become play. In this, children are the greatest. When herding oxen, it is also the watching the seabirds, and of them the great auk. On a time of play, Orda went to find shells in the tall marsh grass. The sharp whistling caused Orda to listen. Really, there's a telling in the sound of the wind, something to know, was Orda's thought aloud. On this, Orda spoke to the wind. What is the saying, wind? Wild wind? The wind howled, Go, go, leave, this island shall become colder. Orda called to the wind, How is this to be known? What is the sign, in truth? The wind whined on. This island shall have only winter and ever be covered with ice. Orda still speaking out loud. Then the message is in the weather. Wild wind, cold wind, the prompting of this. Orda left the marsh. The swift wind hurried Orda to the village. In breath of haste and in spirit of telling, Orda went straight into the Alling house. Orda spoke out at once, the warning counsel of the wind. It is so. It is becoming colder. This island is not going to be green, not even in times of the midnight sun. The rained wind tells me the hills shall be covered with ice. Winter, that is the only season to be on this frosty domain. In such openness were Orda's words that the people of the Althing became fired to act in what they knew. There was no talk of just a child saying. This was the spark that was needed for them and there. The now awakened assembly stood up in salutation, saying, Orda, you are one of us. On hearing this, the Goodison, the wise and older of the council, asked all to hear. Orda knows what she is saying. It is not so. Every year the cold rain wind is earlier. The sleet is shrouding the fjord cliffs in ice, as Orda herself said. Do we not see before our eyes what is true? In agreement, Alma, Orda's mother, said protectively, Orda is a deep girl. She has told us to act. Do what we ought to have already done. Little enough barley and oats is harvested, and for cause of the damp, the meal mildews. We must not live on this island another year. Shall illness and hunger be our companions? The most respected and wiser of the council spoke again, now in tones of urgency. We must leave this frigid country before it's too late. For sake of those who may choose to risk staying, the wise one used an old craft heron. He told of an enchanting tale of islands and a sunny clime. I can tell you a good thing. My grandfather's grandfather and the father of him has been told by a Roman. Now the Roman had been told by a Phoenician. So off the sea a ship must sail by old weather route. It is a wind that comes off the hot land of sand. The far sailing one told of jeweled islands in an ocean of southern star. The way of the wind's ships can sail. The Phoenician himself had taken that close to land route. After entering the southern ocean, the winds were strong. A ship sails so fast it meets the sun before the sun gets up. And be sure a ship can sail into the dark before it's time to be dark. On hearing this, the people of the Althing sang, We had enough bitter cold and hard times, no more of this for us. Let us make our ships ready to leave. And it was so. In the haste the ships were fitted, and the laden in the oncoming sleet rain. Then in late day the ships were boarded, and not one would stay behind. On command, oarsmen rowed the ships out from the narrow fjord into the open northern sea. Yet this artist's task was not soon to be rewarded. Ice floes, then too, mast became covered with frozen sleet. Thus, in fear of overtilt, no sail could be raised. Poles, oars, and tiller, the only means for days and days. The north wind, a harbinger of cold to be on the land, became the very means to outdistance the on-swept frigid clime. Southward the ships were driven, and, as the gallery stoves, the only comfort. Then on a day the weather turned and shone forth, and promising with what the ice on the mast melted, a gladdening to the oarsmen. Deckmen raised sails, and so to the southeast the ships were sped on. At last skies turned blue, and with the weather Orda and her people had never known. Misgivings were gone like shadows in sunshine. In this trust returned the story of the Phoenician had told the Romans. So then it must be so. In pleasantry the days fleeced on by like white clouds against the blue sky. Suddenly there blew upon the ships a land wind, carrying the very smell of land, the fragrance of the fields and blossoms wafting in the air. Swift bluebirds of kinds came to see and greet. The swooping and diving in a way of saying, "Have you anything for us? Any food? We would like that." For the sake of fetching goodwill, ill-afforded, flat bread was cast upon the water and deck, and this was done for the early seafarer, and warned, "Do not fail in giving alms." These winged guests pecked up the pieces of bread, and on the deck, then in chirping visitation, rested upon the railing and rigging. Now, in reason of high wind, land would soon be farther away, so sensing the guests took flight, hovering motionless over the ships for a pause and time, then tipping their wings in a way of saying, "Thank you, and safe journey." On that they of the wings swept toward the island of the birds, for parting must be. In many days a green forest set in golden sand arose in view, and majestic it was to see. It is the land of golden sands. We are in the trade route by the map of the story, was a heartening assurance of the older. Then, in more sailing still of the very story map, the ship swung into a curve of a wide river. While morning, the ship's men and the spears came to the river shore, at first watching. Wary, wise they were. When they saw these strange ones did not draw swords, the men of spears began to dance, saying to and fro. On this, women came out of the huts, chanting a rhythmic clapping of hands. The bright colors of their dresses were like banners, saying, "Come, join us." Hand signs of peace were made, and on this, those of the ship waded ashore, and the women now bowed to each other. In this, all were bidden to come and sit by a long cook fire to eat fish meats and taro bread, a bread not and unlike of their own flatbread. Though the North people were strangers to the hosts who were strangers to them, yet this was a stepping stone, a means to know each other. Customs were shown of how and things. Gold ware, no less harpoons, were the presents of Orda's people, a missionaries on of their own. In the sun of moontime, southward winds bid fair, the telling of time to sail. Water barrels filled and dried roots and fruits were laden on ships. Basket gifts of medicine, herbs, and leaves were given. It was time that dim eyes were saying what breath could not say. Then farewells were waved as the ships were slipped out from shore land into the trade wind of the coast. And so the commander of the lead ship said to the man of the sail, "The land is our guide for our trade routes. Stay in sight of the land until the land leaves us." This is as the Phoenician had told the Roman. I'm saying, for our sake, it has to be so. In the days of high sail, the ships fleeted more east, for there was a turning away of the land, and then a quiet sudden the land fell from sight. A land Orda and her people would never see again, in the same, never to return to the land of the white fox and the great auk, a memory that shall pull at the heartstrings, even in a land of warmth and flowing meadows. Now alone in the sea of the monsoon, a great storm sea, in awe of the unknown ocean, ahead the kinship became ever more so. The day turned to a green-yellow color, and by the warning sails were lowered, the lesson of the wise mariner who had told the Roman. At once it happened, a typhoon fell upon the ships and hurled them abroad and into the sea. In its wild anger, the storm lashed the ships like being whipped in a punishment. Black waves smashed against the ships for cause of this ship. For cause of this, the ships creaked and groaned as though the next wave would be the end. There was no let-up, and pitiless lightning struck down from the heavens, the awful raging of Adad, steaming over the sea and scattering them as frightened geese on a pond, up high in a mountain of water, then to plunge it below in a valley of the ocean. Yet in all these there did come out of the western horizon all the ships that had been rowed from a fjord on a cold rain season ago, and now, gratitude and joy, they clasped their arms round one another as they hoved in sight of the Isle of Tea and Spice, a haven for ships and shipwrecked alike. We are safe, was cried out again and again. In this the children joined. I want to just run, tumble upon the hew and hug the ground like the Phoenician. Oh, shall we ever get to land? It is taking forever. Once again, in raised sails bellowed full, thus so the ships plowed the waters into the harbor. The harbor became the monsoon, was teeming with life. Here merchants thrived in the repair of tattered sails and broken masts. For castaways and outcasts it was a refuge. Now in the ebb of the wind, the ships were rowed and swung abroad in the causeway of the quay. An array of color, with flags and sails of many islands of the South Sea. Seeing out on all this is a place Orda's heart bound at what she saw, the great ladies of esteem and such bearing. Oh, how their dresses flared in the breeze as the ladies sashayed about. Her heart's desire was granted, to go to shore to buy her reward, a gold trinket's worth of her own choice, a sari dress, the very same as the ladies of esteem. They have high place and merchants who are parading on the stone walkways of the quarry. This was Orda's day and hour. Yet this is the isle of serenity and gracious must be left for the sake of their own quest. The sea had quieted and is told it is time to sail again, the last crossing of the sea, far sea journey, all by the Phoenician story, which in this was a map of the trade route, and in less days than ships this was so. The journey's end was about to be, for when the indigo sky turned azure blue, there it was, sparkling on mountain crest. To the eyes as jewels, Jewel Island. We have found it, we have found the Jewel Island, they cried out in pure joy. The wiles of fortune, a return for bread given for alms. Surely skill was the lesser. In time of settlement, Orda's people came to know the real treasure, a land of tropical bounty. Now and again it has been said, a child shall lead them. In this stance, a girl, child, Orda, in the council of the wise. Sometimes I wonder, would Orda ever get back to that enchanting Isle of Tea and Spice? I wonder, such an early colony with hard demands, a new settlement does bring on people. I wonder.